Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship had been exploring space for 3 months now, looking for new planets and checking for any signs of danger near human colonies. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been commanding ships for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like what was waiting for them today. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings," said Dr. Lisa Carter from her science station. She was the ship's science officer, a smart woman who could figure out almost any mystery in space. Her fingers moved quickly over her control panel as she studied the data. "There's something big behind that purple nebula. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The nebula was huge, covering most of their view of this part of space. It glowed with purple and blue colors that moved like slow lightning. "What kind of energy are we talking about, Lisa?" "It's artificial, Captain. Definitely not natural. Whatever is behind that nebula was built by someone with very advanced technology." Lisa looked worried as she continued her scans. "The power levels are enormous, much bigger than anything humans have ever built." Commander Alex Rodriguez, the ship's security chief, stepped forward. He was a strong man with dark hair who always seemed ready for trouble. "Captain, maybe we should report this to Fleet Command before we get any closer. If there's unknown alien technology out there, we might be walking into a trap." Jake thought about this for a moment. His orders were to explore and report back about anything unusual, but they were also supposed to gather as much information as possible. "Ben, are you picking up any communications from whatever is out there?" Lieutenant Ben Hughes, the communications officer, shook his head. He was young and eager, always hoping to make first contact with friendly aliens. "Nothing. On any frequency, Captain. Either they're not talking, or they're using technology we can't detect." "Lisa, how close can we get to that nebula without being seen?" Jake asked. The science officer ran some quick calculations. "The nebula has a lot of interference. If we power down most of our systems and drift slowly, we might be able to get close enough for detailed scans without anyone noticing us." Jake made his decision. "Alex, put the ship on silent running. Lisa, prepare your scanning equipment. Ben, monitor all frequencies and record everything. We're going to take a look at what's hiding behind that nebula." The USS Horizon slowly moved toward the purple clouds of space dust and gas. As they got closer, the strange energy readings got stronger. Lisa worked quietly at her station, her face getting more worried with each passing minute. "Captain," she whispered, "I'm starting to pick up structural details. There are multiple large objects behind the nebula. They look like space stations or processing facilities of some kind." "How large are we talking about?" Jake asked. "Each one is bigger than any space station humans have ever built. And Captain, there are dozens of them." The ship drifted closer, hidden by the nebula's interference. Soon they could see the edge of the purple clouds, and what lay beyond made everyone on the bridge freeze in shock. Massive metal structures floated in space, each one stretching for miles. They were dark gray and covered with blinking lights. Strange ships moved between them like insects around a hive. But what made Jake's blood run cold were the smaller shapes moving around the outside of each structure. "Ben, magnify Section 7 on the main screen," Jake ordered. The image grew larger, and now they could see clearly. Hundreds of small figures in spacesuits were working on the outside of the structures. They moved slowly, like they were very tired or sick. Other figures in different colored suits stood nearby, watching them work. "Lisa, scan those workers." "What species are they?" Jake's voice was quiet, but urgent. Dr. Carter ran her scans and looked at the results with growing horror. "Captain, I'm reading at least 12 different species out there. The genetic patterns match several civilizations that were supposed to be extinct according to galactic records. "What do you mean, extinct?" Alex asked. "According to the Galactic Council's historical data, these species disappeared hundreds or thousands of years ago. Their home worlds were found empty, with no sign of what happened to the populations." Lisa's hands shook as she continued scanning. "But Captain, these genetic patterns show that many of those workers are direct descendants of those lost civilizations." Jake felt sick to his stomach as he began to understand what they were looking at. "You're saying those aren't extinct species? They were kidnapped." "That's exactly what I'm saying, Captain. And look at this." Lisa brought up another scan on her screen. "I'm detecting a species we haven't seen before. They're taller than humans, with 4 arms and insect-like features. They seem to be the ones in charge." On the main screen, they could see some of these tall alien figures directing the workers. They carried weapons and moved with the confidence of those in complete control. "Ben, are you recording all of this?" Jake asked. "Every second, Captain. This is going straight to the black box." For the next 2 hours, the USS Horizon stayed hidden in the nebula while the crew documented everything they saw. They watched as ships arrived, carrying more workers from different species. They saw the insect-like aliens, who Lisa named the Overseers, directing the construction of even more facilities. But the worst discovery came when Dr. Carter finished her detailed analysis. "Captain, you need to see this," she said quietly. "I've been analyzing the computer systems on those facilities. I managed to hack into some of their less secure databases." "What did you find?" Lisa's face was pale as she answered. "They have a catalog, Captain. A catalog of species throughout the galaxy. Each entry has detailed information about population levels, technology levels, and something called harvest potential." "Harvest potential?" Alex asked, though he clearly didn't want to hear the answer. "How useful each species would be as slave labor, and how easy they would be to capture and control." Lisa paused, then delivered the news that would change everything. "Captain, humanity is in their database. We're listed as a high-priority target." The bridge fell completely silent. Jake stared at the screen, showing the massive slave operation. Knowing that these creatures had marked humanity for the same fate as dozens of other civilizations. "What's our status in their catalog?" he asked, dreading the answer. "We're classified as future acquisition, priority level 1. Our estimated capture date is ... Lisa checked her data again. "Within the next 50 years. They've already been monitoring our colonies and trade routes." Ben spoke up from his station. "Captain, I'm picking up increased activity from the facilities. More ships are arriving, and they seem to be expanding their operations." Jake looked around at his crew. These brave men and women had signed up to explore space and make contact with friendly alien species. Instead, they had discovered that humanity was being hunted by creatures who had already enslaved entire civilizations. "Lisa, how many species do you estimate are being held in those facilities?" "Based on the size and population density, probably millions of individuals from at least 30 different species, Captain." Jake made a decision that would affect the future of humanity and every enslaved being in those horrible factories. "Ben, prepare a message for Fleet Command. Maximum encryption. Tell them we've discovered a threat to human survival and need immediate response from the highest levels of government. Alex, I want continuous monitoring of those facilities, but we stay hidden. We need to learn everything we can about these creatures and their operations before we make any moves. Lisa, I want you to download as much data as possible from their systems. Find out everything you can about their technology, their weaknesses, and their plans." As the USS Horizon continued its silent watch, Jake Morrison knew that humanity's peaceful exploration of space had just ended. Somewhere in those dark factories, millions of beings suffered under alien masters, who thought humans would be their next victims. The overseers had made one critical mistake in their planning. They thought humans were just another weak species that could be easily captured and enslaved. They had no idea that they had just made humanity their greatest enemy. Admiral Karen Williams sat in the secure briefing room deep inside Fleet Command headquarters on Earth. The message from Captain Morrison had arrived 3 days ago, and she had not slept well since reading it. Around the table sat the most important people in human space defense. General Paul Stewart commanded the Marine Corps. Intelligence Director Nancy Price knew secrets from across the galaxy, and Chief Strategist Colonel Danny Brooks could plan military operations better than anyone. Alive. Show them the recording again, Nancy, Admiral Williams said quietly. The lights dimmed and a holographic display filled the center of the room. The images from the USS Horizon played again, showing the massive slave facilities and the millions of beings working under alien control. Everyone had seen it before, but it still made them feel sick to watch. How certain are we that this information is accurate? General Stewart asked. He was a big man with scars on his hands from old battles, and he did not like surprises. Captain, Morrison is one of our best commanders, Admiral Williams replied. His science officer, Dr. Carter, is brilliant. If she says those genetic scans show enslaved populations from supposedly extinct civilizations, then that's what they show. Nancy Price leaned forward. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who had spent her life learning other people's secrets. I've had my people checking the data against our intelligence files. Some of those species in the facilities are ones we've had contact with in the past 50 years. What do you mean? Colonel Brooks asked. The Centauri, for example. We met their representatives 20 years ago. They told us their home world had been destroyed in a civil war, and they were refugees looking for a new planet. But according to Morrison's data, there are thousands of Centauri working as slaves in those facilities. A room fell quiet as everyone understood what this meant. The Centauri we met weren't refugees, Admiral Williams said slowly. They were working for these slave masters. That's right, Nancy continued. I think we've been talking to puppet governments for years. Species that were partially conquered and now help the slave masters find new targets. Dr. Rachel Stone had been quiet during most of the meeting. She was Earth's best expert on alien biology and had been studying the data from Morrison's ship. I found something else disturbing, she said, opening her computer files. I compared the information about missing human colonies with the patterns we're seeing in this slave operation. She brought up a map showing human space and marked several locations with red dots. These are colonies that went missing over the past 10 years. We assumed they were attacked by pirates or destroyed by natural disasters because we never found any survivors. But now you think differently? General Stewart asked. I think they were test raids. The slave masters wanted to see how humans fight, how our technology works, and how hard we would be to capture. Dr. Stone's voice was angry as she continued. Each of these colonies had something different to offer as a test. New Washington had our latest defensive systems. The mining station at Kepler 7 had our newest industrial equipment. The research outpost at Wolf 359 had our most advanced computers. Colonel Brooks studied the map carefully. You're saying they've been studying us for years, preparing for a full invasion. That's exactly what I'm saying. And based on their previous patterns with other species, I think they're almost ready to begin the harvest. Admiral Williams stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over the military base. Thousands of people worked there every day, not knowing that humanity might be facing the fight of its life. Nancy, what do we know about the species that's running this operation? Dr. Carter called them overseers in her report, but I've found references to them in some very old alien databases. They call themselves the Kethfer. According to the limited information available, they've been operating for over 1,000 years. 1,000 years of enslaving entire civilizations, General. Stewart said quietly. Nancy nodded. From what I can piece together, they follow the same pattern every time. First, they send agents to make contact with the species and learn about their technology and culture. Then they arrange for conflicts between different groups within that species to keep them busy fighting each other instead of advancing their technology. Finally, when the species is weak enough, they move in and capture the entire population. Have they done this to humans? Dr. Stone asked. I'm still investigating, but I think so. Some of the wars between human colonies in the past might not have been as natural as we thought. The Kethvar are very good at making conflicts look like internal problems rather than outside interference. Admiral Williams turned back to the group. How much time do we have? Colonel Brooks had been running calculations on his computer. Based on their historical patterns and the intelligence Morrison gathered, I estimate we have between 6 months and 2 years before they begin the main assault on human space. That's not much time to prepare for a war against an enemy that's been planning this for years, General Stewart said. Then we need to start immediately, Admiral Williams decided. Danny, I want you to begin planning a complete military mobilization. But it has to look like normal fleet exercises and expansion. We can't let them know that we've discovered their plans. Nancy, I need your people to identify every alien species we've had contact with in the past 50 years. I want to know which ones are really puppet governments working for the Kethvar. Rachel, keep studying their technology and biology. I want to know their weaknesses. Dr. Stone had been thinking about something while the others talked. Admiral, there's something else we need to consider. If we're going to fight the Kethvar, we might be able to get help from the species they've already enslaved. What do you mean? Morrison's data shows that some of the slaves have been there for hundreds of years. They know the Kethvar better than anyone. They know their technology, their methods, their weaknesses. If we could somehow make contact with them. General Stewart leaned forward with interest. You're talking about turning their own slaves against them. Exactly. The Kethvar have made a lot of enemies over the centuries. If we could coordinate a revolt among the enslaved populations while we attack their military forces. Admiral Williams smiled for the first time since the meeting began. We might be able to hit them from inside and outside at the same time. Over the next several hours, the group worked out the basic plan for what they secretly called Operation Silent Storm. The human fleet would quietly move into position while gathering intelligence about Kethvar operations. Scientists would study captured technology and develop new weapons. Intelligence agents would work to identify puppet species and possibly turn them against their masters. There's one more thing, Nancy said near the end of the meeting. I've been analyzing the Kethvar database that Morrison's people accessed. They have detailed information about human psychology and behavior, but all of it is based on observing U.S. during peacetime. What's your point? Colonel Brooks asked. They think they understand humans, but they've never seen us in a real war. They've seen us fight small conflicts between colonies, but never a war for our species' survival. They don't know what humans are capable of when we're truly threatened. General Stewart grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. They're about to find out. The meeting ended with everyone having specific tasks to complete. As they left the room, Admiral Williams stayed behind to look out the window again. Somewhere out in space, Captain Morrison and his crew were still watching the slave facilities, gathering more intelligence and waiting for orders. The Kethvar had spent years planning to enslave humanity. They thought humans were just another weak species that could be easily conquered. They had no idea that they had just given humanity the greatest motivation possible to become their most dangerous enemy. Admiral Williams picked up her secure communication device and began composing a message to Morrison. It was time to begin the preparations that would determine whether humanity would remain free or join the millions of beings already suffering under Kethver control. The war had not yet begun, but the outcome would be decided by the preparations they made in the coming months. Humanity had one advantage that Kethver did not expect. They had learned the truth, and they were ready to fight. 6 months had passed since Admiral Williams first learned about the Kethver threat. Now she stood in the largest military meeting room on Earth, watching as representatives from every human colony and government arrived for the most important gathering in human history. President Richard Hayes had called the emergency session, but only the most trusted leaders knew the real reason they were here. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Hayes began, "what you are about to learn will change everything about how humanity sees its place in the galaxy. Admiral Williams, please begin the briefing." The lights dimmed and the holographic displays showed the terrible images from the slave factories. Leaders from across human space watched in shock as Admiral Williams explained what Captain Morrison had discovered. Some people gasped, others sat in stunned silence, but everyone understood that humanity was facing its greatest threat. "How do we know this information is real?" asked Governor Lisa Martin from the new Terra colony. Dr. Rachel Stone stepped forward. Over the past months, she had become the leading expert on Kethver technology and biology. "We've confirmed the intelligence through multiple sources. Captain Morrison's crew has been watching their operations for months, and we've also managed to intercept some of their communications." "What have you learned about them?" President Hayes asked. "The Kethver are an old species that has built their entire civilization around slavery. They don't produce anything themselves. Instead, they capture other species and force them to do all the work. They've been doing this for over 1,000 years. Dr. Kevin Walsh, who had been working with Dr. Stone, added more details. "We've analyzed samples of their technology that Captain Morrison's team managed to collect. It's advanced, but it has weaknesses. The Kethver haven't had to innovate or improve their weapons in centuries because they've never faced serious resistance." "What kind of weaknesses?" asked General Stewart. Dr. Amanda Foster, another scientist on the research team, answered. "Their weapons are powerful, but not very flexible. They're designed to overwhelm primitive defenses, not to fight against an enemy that can adapt and change tactics. Also, their entire command system depends on a central control network." Admiral Williams took control of the briefing again. "Based on this information, we've developed a plan called Operation Silent Storm. We're going to prepare for war while making it look like normal military activities." She changed the display to show a map of human space with ship positions marked. "We've been quietly moving our fleet into better positions. Ships that were supposed to be on routine patrols are actually forming defensive lines around our most important colonies." Colonel Danny Brooks stepped up to explain the military preparations. "We've created new Special Forces units specifically trained to fight the Kethver. The Deep Strike Battalion, commanded by Colonel Tony Rodriguez, specializes in attacking enemy facilities and freeing prisoners. The Stealth Operations Group, led by Major Susan Bell, focuses on destroying enemy communications and supply lines." "What about our regular fleet?" asked Admiral Robert Kim from the Outer Colonies Defense Force. "We've been upgrading every ship we can," Admiral Williams replied. "The USS Liberation is now our flagship, and ships like the USS Defiance and USS Vengeance have been fitted with new weapons designed specifically to fight Kethver technology." Captain Larry Turner, who commanded the USS Defiance, had been quiet during most of the briefing. Now he spoke up. "Admiral, my crew has been training with the new weapon systems. They're effective, but we're still outnumbered. The Kethver have hundreds of ships and those massive space stations. That's where our other advantage comes in, said Nancy Price, the intelligence director. We've made contact with some of the enslaved species. The room fell silent as everyone waited to hear more. Captain Morrison's team managed to rescue a small group of escaped slaves 3 months ago. Their leader is a being named Zethkal from the Miran species. Through him, we've learned that there are resistance movements inside the slave facilities. President Hayes leaned forward. Are you saying we might have allies already inside their operations? That's exactly what I'm saying. Zethkal has been secretly communicating with other resistance groups using hidden transmitters. There are millions of enslaved beings who want to fight back, but they've never had the chance. Dr. Stone added more important information. Zethkal also told us about the Kethver's greatest weakness. Their entire empire is controlled by a central network that manages everything from ship movements to slave assignments. If we could destroy or capture that work, we could bring down their whole operation at once, General Stewart finished. Admiral Williams nodded. But we have a problem. Our intelligence suggests that the Kethvar have moved up their timeline. Instead of attacking in a year or two, they're planning to begin the harvest of humanity within the next few months. A room erupted in worried voices as leaders realized how little time they had left. How can you be sure? Asked Governor Martin. Nancy Price answered. Our monitoring stations have detected massive ship movements in Kethver space. They're gathering their fleet and moving slave processing equipment toward human territory. We estimate they'll be ready to attack within 8 to 12 weeks. President Hayes stood up. Then we need to make our final preparations immediately. Admiral Williams, what do you need from us? Every available ship, every trained crew member, and complete cooperation between all human governments. This isn't a war between colonies or nations. This is a war for the survival of our entire species. Over the next several hours, the leaders worked out the details of humanity's defense. Each colony would contribute ships and crews to the unified fleet. Manufacturing facilities would focus on producing weapons and equipment. Scientists would continue developing new technologies based on captured Kethver equipment. But the most important decision came when Zethkal himself was brought into the meeting via secure communication link. The alien looked like a tall, thin humanoid with blue skin and large eyes that showed the sadness of centuries of slavery. Humans, Zethkal said in careful English, my people and many others have waited so long for someone strong enough to fight the Kethver. We will help you in any way we can. What can you tell us about their central control network? Admiral Williams asked. It is located in a massive space station called the Heart of Chains. It controls every Kethver operation across multiple star systems, but it is heavily defended and protected by their strongest fleet. Captain Morrison, joining the communication from his ship, added more details. We've been observing increased activity around that station. It looks like they're preparing it for the final phase of their expansion into human space. Dr. Foster had been studying the technical data. If we could get close enough to that station, we might be able to use their own network against them. Instead of just destroying it, we could reprogram it to free all the slaves simultaneously. How would we get close enough? Colonel Brooks asked. That's where our allies come in, Nancy Price explained. Zethkal and the other resistance leaders have people working inside Kethver facilities. They could help us get past the outer defenses. Zethkal's image nodded. Many of my people work on the Heart of Chains itself. They maintain the computers and equipment. If human warriors could reach the station, we could guide them to the control center. President Hayes looked around the room at all the human leaders. Are we all agreed? We're going to fight not just to defend humanity, but to free every enslaved being in the galaxy? Every person in the room nodded or spoke their agreement. Admiral Williams felt a mix of fear and determination. as she realized the enormous task ahead of them. Humanity was about to fight the most powerful slave empire in the galaxy, but they wouldn't be fighting alone. Millions of enslaved beings were counting on them for freedom. The Kethvar had made their biggest mistake when they decided to target humanity. They thought humans were just another weak species that could be easily conquered. They had no idea that humans would never accept slavery for themselves or anyone else. The final preparations were about to begin. The first Kethvar attack ships appeared at the edge of human space on a Tuesday morning. Captain Rita Morgan was commanding the USS Vengeance on patrol near the Mars colony when her sensors detected the massive alien fleet dropping out of hyperspace. "Captain, I'm reading over 200 enemy vessels," reported her tactical officer. "They're moving directly toward Mars." Captain Morgan had been preparing for this moment for months. "Send the alert to Fleet Command. All units, battle stations. Execute. Plan Alpha." Across human space, similar scenes played out as Kethvar fleets attacked multiple colonies at once. The aliens expected to find scared, unprepared humans who would surrender quickly. Instead, they found coordinated defenses that had been waiting. For them, Admiral Karen Williams watched the battle reports from her command center aboard the USS Liberation. The Kethvar were attacking with overwhelming force, just as their intelligence had predicted. But human defenses were holding better than expected. "Admiral, Luna Station reports successful defense," announced her communications officer. "The enemy expected our defensive systems to be primitive, but our new weapons are causing heavy damage to their ships." The Battle of Luna Station became the first major test of human preparations. Commander Jake Peterson led the station's defenses while Captain Larry Turner brought the USS Defiance and 3 other ships to help. The Kethvar attacked with 50 ships, confident they could destroy the station quickly. But the human defenders had advantages the aliens didn't expect. Their weapons were specifically designed to penetrate Kethvar shields, and their tactics were flexible and unpredictable. Within 2 hours, the Kethvar fleet was forced to retreat, leaving 15 destroyed. Ships behind. "The aliens are confused," reported Nancy Price from the Intelligence Center. "Their communications show they weren't prepared for organized resistance. They expected humans to panic and surrender." Admiral Williams smiled grimly. "Send the signal." To Captain Morrison. "It's time for Phase 2. Captain Morrison had been waiting near the first slave facility they had discovered months ago. His strike force included the USS Horizon, 2 other ships, and a group of specially trained Marines, led by Colonel Tony Rodriguez. "Remember, our primary goal is to free the prisoners and gather intelligence," Morrison told his team over the communication system. "We need to show the Kethvar that their slave operations are no longer safe." The attack on the slave facility was swift and devastating. The Kethvar guards were not prepared for human tactics. Colonel Rodriguez and his Marines used stealth and surprise to capture the facility's control center, while Morrison's ships destroyed the defensive platforms. Dr. Lisa Carter worked quickly to access the facility's computer systems. "Captain, I'm downloading their database now. This facility has detailed information about dozens of other slave operations." But the most important moment came when the prison doors opened, and thousands of enslaved beings saw human soldiers for the first time. "You are free," Colonel Rodriguez announced through his translator device. "We are humans, and we are here to fight the Kethvar. Will you help us?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Aliens from dozens of different species cheered and cried as they realized their captivity was over. Many had skills that would be useful in the war against their former captors. Zethkal, who had been secretly coordinating with the resistance movements, met with Morrison after the facility was secured. "Captain, this victory will inspire enslaved beings throughout Kethvar space. Word is already spreading through hidden communication networks. How many facilities like this one exist? Morrison asked. Hundreds, across dozens of star systems. But the Kethvar will start moving their most important prisoners to more secure locations. We need to act quickly. Over the next 3 weeks, human forces launched attacks on 12 different slave facilities. Each victory freed thousands of prisoners and provided valuable intelligence about Kethvar operations. More importantly, each attack demonstrated that the slave empire was vulnerable. Major Susan Bell and her stealth operations group struck at Kethvar supply lines and communication centers. They destroyed fuel depots, sabotaged transport ships, and eliminated key commanders. The aliens found their carefully organized empire falling into chaos. Their command structure is breaking down, reported Dr. Stone after analyzing intercepted communications. The Kethvar have never had to deal with attacks on their support systems. They don't know how to adapt. But the Kethvar were not helpless. As they realized the scope of human resistance, they began using more desperate tactics. Reports came in of alien forces using enslaved populations as human shields during battles. This strategy backfired completely. When word spread that the Kethvar were threatening to kill prisoners rather than face defeat, even their puppet species began switching sides. The Zentari government, which had been secretly working for the Kethvar for 20 years, suddenly offered to help human forces. Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 species that were working with the Kethvar, Nancy Price reported. They want to join the fight against their former masters. Admiral Williams made a decision that would shape the rest of the war. Accept their surrender, but they have to prove their commitment by helping us free more prisoners. Actions, not just words. The war was expanding beyond what anyone had imagined. What started as a defense of human space was becoming a galaxy-wide rebellion against the Kethvar slave empire. Captain Turner and the USS Defiance led a combined fleet of human ships and vessels, crewed by freed slaves, in an attack on a major Kethvar military base. The aliens found themselves fighting not just humans, but their own former prisoners, who knew their tactics and weaknesses. The Kethvar are starting to panic, observed Colonel Brooks during a strategy meeting. Their communications show increasing desperation. Some of their commanders are calling for the use of their ultimate weapon. What ultimate weapon? Admiral Williams asked. Nancy Price brought up intelligence reports on her screen. We're not sure, but references suggest they have the ability to destroy entire star systems if they can't control them. It seems they would rather destroy everything than lose their empire. This news changed everything about the war strategy. Human forces couldn't just defeat the Kethvar militarily. They had to capture the aliens' leadership before they could activate whatever terrible weapon they possessed. Where is their main command center? President Hayes asked during a secure communication from Earth. According to our intelligence from freed slaves, everything is controlled from the heart of Chain Station. Admiral Williams replied, but it's heavily defended and located deep in Kethvar space. Zethkal, now serving as a liaison between human forces and the various resistance groups, provided crucial information. The heart of Chains controls everything, but it also has a weakness. If the central computer system is damaged, the Kethvar lose control of their entire fleet and all their facilities at once. Dr. Carter, who had been studying captured Kethvar technology, made an important discovery. I think I can modify their own computer virus protection to work against them. If we can get close enough to their central system, we might be able to turn their own network against them. Instead of just destroying their command center, we could use it to free every slave in the galaxy simultaneously, Dr. Stone added. Admiral. Williams looked at the reports showing human and allied forces winning battles across multiple star systems. The Kethvar slave empire was cracking, but the final victory would require a direct assault on their most heavily defended position. Begin preparations for the final attack, she ordered. We're going to end this war by striking at the heart of their empire. The Kethvar had underestimated humanity from the beginning. They thought humans were just another weak species that could be easily enslaved. Now they were learning that humans would fight not just for their own freedom, but for the freedom of every enslaved being in the galaxy. The final battle was about to begin. The Heart of Chains Station was the largest artificial structure Admiral Karen Williams had ever seen. It stretched for hundreds of miles through space, covered with massive towers and weapon platforms. From her position aboard the USS Liberation, she could see the combined fleet that would decide the fate of millions of enslaved beings across the galaxy. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced her communications officer. The fleet included not just human vessels, but ships crewed by dozens of different species that had been freed from Kethvar slavery. Former prisoners now fought alongside their liberators. "Zethkal, are your people in position?" Admiral Williams asked. The Miran leader appeared on the main screen from his position aboard a captured Kethvar transport ship. "Yes, Admiral. Resistance. Members throughout the station are ready to help your forces reach the central control room, but you must move quickly. The Kethvar commanders know you are coming." Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral and commanding a strike force of 12 ships, checked his final preparations. "My Marines are ready for the boarding operation. Colonel Rodriguez has trained them specifically for fighting inside Kethvar facilities. Dr. Carter, is the computer virus ready?" Admiral Williams asked. The science officer nodded from her station. "I've modified their own security protocols to work against them. If we can access their central computer for just 5 minutes, I can turn their entire network into a liberation system that will free every slave facility in the galaxy." "Admiral," interrupted the tactical officer, "the Kethvar fleet is moving to intercept us. Over 400 ships, including their largest battleships." Admiral Williams took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine whether humanity and its allies would win freedom for the galaxy, or whether the Kethvar would activate their ultimate weapon and destroy entire star systems rather than lose control. "All ships, begin the attack. Remember, our goal is not just victory, but liberation." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships, designed specifically to fight Kethvar technology, tore through the alien fences with weapons that the slavers had never faced before. Ships crewed by former slaves fought with desperate courage, knowing this was their only chance for permanent freedom. Captain Larry Turner commanded the USS Defiance in the front line of the assault. His ship had been upgraded with the most advanced weapons humanity could build. "Target their command ships first," he ordered. "If we can disrupt their coordination, the smaller ships will be easier to handle." The Kethvar fought with the desperation of creatures who knew their empire was ending. Their ships were powerful, but they had not innovated their tactics in centuries. Human commanders like Captain Riga Morgan on the USS Vengeance used flexible strategies that confused and overwhelmed the alien forces. "Admiral, we've broken through their outer defense line," reported Morrison, beginning approach to the station. But as the human ships got closer to the Heart of Chains, the real defenses activated. Massive weapon platforms emerged from hidden positions on the station surface. Energy beams powerful enough to destroy entire ships swept through space. "We're taking heavy damage," reported one ship captain. "These defenses are stronger than anything we've faced." "This is where our allies prove their worth," Admiral Williams replied. "Zethkal, execute your plan." Throughout the Heart of Chains Station, Resistance members who had been secretly preparing for this moment began their coordinated attack. Enslaved beings who had maintained the station's systems for years suddenly turned those same systems against their captors. Power went out in key sections of the station. Weapon platforms stopped firing as their control systems were sabotaged. Airlocks opened unexpectedly, sucking Kethfor guards into space. The slavers found their own station turning against them. "Now, Admiral Morrison," Williams ordered, "take your boarding parties in while their defenses are down." Morrison's ships raced toward the station as explosions erupted across its surface. Colonel Rodriguez led the first wave of Marines through breached airlocks, fighting their way toward the central control room. The corridors were filled with confused Kethfor guards who couldn't understand how their perfect security had failed. "This way," called a freed slave who met Rodriguez's team at an intersection. "I know the fastest route to the control center." As the Marines fought through the station, Admiral Williams coordinated the space battle outside. The Kethfor fleet was falling apart as ship after ship was destroyed or surrendered. But she knew the real victory would come only when Dr. Carter could access the central computer. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the HFY High Command," announced the communications officer. The main screen showed a tall, insect-like creature with 4 arms and cold black eyes. This was the first time any human had seen a Kethfor leader face to face. "I am War Master Kethzol," the alien said in perfect English. "You have impressed us with your resistance, humans. We offer you a bargain. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to serve us in positions of honor. Continue fighting, and we will activate the Star Killer weapon and destroy every human world." Admiral Williams stared at the creature that had enslaved millions of beings across the galaxy. "We don't make deals with slavers. We're here to free everyone you've captured, and we're going to succeed. Then you will watch your worlds burn," Kethzol replied, and the transmission ended. "Admiral," called the tactical officer urgently, "we're detecting massive energy buildup from the station's core. They're activating some kind of weapon system." Admiral Williams realized the Kethfor were serious about their threat. Rather than lose their empire, they would destroy everything. "Morrison, how close are you to the control room?" 2 minutes. "Count," came the reply. "We can hear fighting ahead. The resistance members are holding the control room, but barely." Those 2 minutes felt like hours as Admiral Williams watched energy readings from the station climb higher and higher. If the Kethfor activated their weapon, entire human colonies would be destroyed. "We're here," Rodriguez reported as his Marines burst into the central control room. The chamber was enormous, filled with computer systems that controlled the entire Kethfor Empire. Freed slaves were fighting desperately against Kethfor guards who were trying to activate the Star Killer weapon. "Dr. Carter, you're up," Morrison called. The science officer ran to the central computer terminal, her modified virus program ready to upload. But as she connected her equipment, alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Star Killer weapon charging," announced a mechanical voice. "Destruction sequence will begin in 60 seconds. Dr. Carter's fingers flew over the controls as she uploaded her program into the Kethfor network. "I'm in, but their security is trying to stop me. I need more time." 30 seconds to weapon activation," the voice announced. Colonel Rodriguez and his Marines formed a protective circle around Dr. Carter as more Kethfor guards rushed into the control room. The fighting was fierce, but the Marines held their ground. 10 seconds, came the warning. "Got it," Dr. Carter shouted triumphantly. Her virus spread through the Kethfor network like wildfire, turning their own systems against them. Instead of activating the Star Killer weapon, the computer began broadcasting liberation codes to every slave facility in the galaxy. Throughout Kethfor space, prison doors opened simultaneously. Millions of enslaved beings realized they were finally free. The slavers' empire collapsed in minutes as their own infrastructure turned against them. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender signals from Kethfor ships throughout the galaxy," reported the communications officer. "The war is over." Admiral Williams looked at the tactical display showing freed slave facilities across dozens of systems. Humanity had not just defended itself, but had liberated the entire galaxy from 1,000 years of slavery. All ships, cease fire and begin rescue operations, she ordered. Today, freedom has won. In the years that followed, the former slave facilities were converted into centers of learning and cooperation. The Galactic Liberation Council, led by Admiral Morrison, ensured that no species would ever again face slavery. The Kethvar had made their greatest mistake when they marked humanity for enslavement. They thought humans were just another weak species. Instead, they discovered that humans would fight not just for their own freedom, but for the freedom of all sentient beings. Galaxy was finally free.